here. Hi, first of all, I'm Stacy Haynes, and I am the co-founder of Generative Somatics and also the director of methodology for Strozzi Institute. I'm very happy to see you all today. We're living in a very, very big time together. I'm glad to be in practice together. I want to ask you all as we move through our hour today, if you have questions, if you can put them into the chat. So Lunas is going to be sorting through those, and we'll have time for Q&A in the end after we've gotten a chance to practice together. Great to see kids on here. Hi. So if you can do that in the chat, that would be great. It's a little hard, as you all know, to manage multiple voices when there's so many of us. Give us just another moment here, and then we will dive in. Also, if you have any technical issues, anything like that, you can also put those into the chat and we'll be tracking those. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and dive in. So our topic and what we'll really be, focusing in on and practicing with today is resilience. What is resilience? How do we really see that and understand that somatically? And then how do we purposefully cultivate resilience, particularly in times that are so highly pressured and stressful? We're all facing a lot of stress daily. We're dealing with loss in many different ways, grief for some of us. And, how do we in those times really bring ourselves holistically back to a resource state? Yeah, so we'll be diving into all of that. Because many people on this session may be new to somatics, I want to talk for a minute about what somatics is and what we really mean by soma. Somatics is really the art of embodied transformation. So embodied transformation means that it's change or ways of practicing and cultivating ourselves that let us, even under pressure, take actions that are aligned with what we most care about and that are resourced, right? Moving from a resource state rather than a triggered state. And it is an easy time to be triggered. Soma, because I might be using that word, I might use it interchangeably with body, but the soma is really our embodied thinking and worldviews. It's our embodied habits, our good habits and our bad habits. It's our embodied ways of relating, and really how we're orienting. So it's more than just the body as an object, but the soma is really the embodied self. So as we talk about somatics today, we're looking at the whole embodied self, okay? All right, so as you all know, because we're living it together, this is a time where there are a lot of threats and opportunities. And one of the key ways I think about resilience is how do we get ourselves centered in a more resourced, grounded, hopeful state so that we can respond to the threats and to the challenges rather than react to them. And also that we can see the opportunities rather than moving out of kind of an automatic reaction to pressure, okay? So I want to talk for a moment about what resilience isn't, and then I'm going to dive into what resilience is. So what resilience isn't is a way to numb ourselves, right? It's like it's too much, I'm overwhelmed, so let me shut myself down and numb. It's not that. What resilience isn't is a spiritual bypass. Like it's all going to be okay. I'm just going to kind of check out, get into a very spiritual state of hope and hang out there till it's all over. Okay, it's not that. And it's also not a way to, and I know none of us mean this, but it's also not a way to blame or oppress others. There can kind of be a tagline in resilience of like, the people most impacted or the communities most impacted, they're resilient communities, and therefore not attend to really the people and places that are most impacted in this pandemic. So those are all the things resilience isn't, okay? What resilience is and how we can really mark resilience is that resilience allows us to feel more and to be able to process those feelings to help ourselves recenter. Resilience is a way to stay connected to what we most care about. Uh, Resilience is a way to get into right action, right, instead of reaction. And that's right action for ourselves and our families, for our communities, and again, for those communities that are most impacted in our times. I'm going to share with you, I'm going to share my screen here for a minute and share with you a definition of resilience that we use. So I'm just going to highlight some of this, okay? So resilience is our inherent way. We're born with an inherent capacity for resilience, but it's our way of bouncing back in difficult, oppressive, or traumatic times or from those experiences, okay? It's really part of how we live through these times in a resourced way and not just a way of surviving. Resilience can really fuel happiness, connection, and well-being, and basically can give us a sense, an embodied sense of hope, aliveness, wisdom. We all have different words for it, but it's in that direction. Somatically, what it really is our ability to shift ourselves from a traumatic or hyper alert or hyper aroused reaction or state, which is very, very, very normal in this time. We get why many of us are there, to really a more calm, cohesive, or coherent sense of wholeness, right, way of being. And very importantly, resilience helps to bring a positive imagination for the future, right? So we're seeing possibilities for the future. Again, not just kind of ducking and surviving what's happening, and lets us reestablish safety and connection. Yeah. So ways to be safe and generate safety, and also ways to be connected with ourselves, with others, with the natural environment. And again, inside of that, we are inherently resilient and creative people. And that's true for ourselves individually. It's also true for our communities. And there are practices, which we'll do some today, that can help to cultivate resilience, particularly in times of stress. Okay. So that's how we're really looking at and defining resilience. There's some research that I want to highlight, and I'm not going to kind of keep us on this share. I'm going to go back to being able to see you all here. There are numerous sets of research on resilience. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that research shows. There are key things that cultivate resilience for human beings really across culture. And you might just want to note these for yourself as I talk about them, because it'll become a part of our practice in just a little bit here. One is a connection to nature. And that can be anything from the plant in your house to wilderness. But a connection to nature is shown to be a very, very big resilience factor for us humans. Another is animals, right? So it's not a surprise that we have what we call now emotional support animals, or that those of us might have fond experiences with our connections with animals. Animals are a very big resilience factor. Another one that's very important, and I think very important for our time, is art. And you can think of art writ large. So that might be drawing, that can be dancing and movement, again, ourselves or with other people. It's also music. There's really beautiful resilience research out of South Africa in the revolution movement, right, from apartheid into democratic South Africa, about drumming and movement and dancing together. Those are all, that big category called art is a very large resilience factor. Another is a connection to what we might call spirit. Some call it God. Some just call it the vastness or the unknown, but a resilience to what's bigger than us and a spiritual source that does not inherently need to be through a religion, but rather a directly felt experience of being connected to what's greater. Yeah. And then lastly, a couple of others is it's resilience giving for us as people to be positively connected to other people. And, as I'm talking with my friends who live alone, this is a very intense time because we are sheltering in place, most of us. It can be a time when there's an overabundance of alone time that can lead to loneliness or feeling disconnected. I know often by the end of my day, I have been on Zoom too much. Like, I don't want to be with people two dimensionally. I want to be with people where I can touch them. And some of us have access to that right now and some don't. But connection, right? Remaining connected is a resilience factor. And then lastly, our capacity to help other people brings us resilience. So where can we contribute? Where can we give? Where can we nourish and support others? Those are things that also fuel our inherent capacity for resilience. Okay. So, excuse me. I just want to note some of those because as we head into a practice in a little bit, I'm going to ask each of you to start recalling experiences that have brought you or bring you resilience, and we're gonna really touch those purposefully. So most of us should find something out of that big list. All right. Um, Uh, what I want to do here, I want to spend a good part of our time actually in practice. So I'm going to start with us starting to access and look for what brings us that sense of coherence, connection to something bigger, a sense of hope, right? These felt spirit experiences of resilience. So I'm going to ask each of us, you can either write it on your computer, um, handwrite it the old school way, or just sit and really contemplate for yourself a very particular experience of resilience that you have had in your life. Yeah. So again, you might think of a very particular time where you're connected to nature or spirit, or a very particular time with music or movement or drumming, or a particular time of helping another. Okay. And I want us to get particular because that's really how we access it as more than a concept and actually as a lived experience that we can recall, we can somatize or begin to embody more deeply. And then what we'll do is we'll pivot and we want to practice it on purpose every day. A daily practice of resilience is really what I want to leave us with after this call. So I'll just give you a particular experience for me as kind of a road in. I grew up in a very small mountain town in the Rockies in Colorado. Small, like 1,200 people in my hometown. One of the things that was amazing about growing up there is, nature was really bigger than people. And there's very, very little light pollution, and the night sky was stunning, just zillions of stars. And my sister and I often, in the summer, we would get our sleeping bag and we would go outside, and we had a trampoline, which is also another resilience thing for me, is jumping up and down on that trampoline. But we'd go and we'd sleep out overnight. And this particular experience, I was probably about 13 years old. I remember just zipping up in the sleeping bag because it was always cold, even in the summer, and looking out at the just zillions of stars in the night sky and noticing their brightness and their dimness, just noticing the patterns of the stars in the sky, and just having a deep sense of my own connection to that vastness. Yeah. So we want to get particular like that. What's a moment? What's an experience for you? Yeah. So as you start to access a very particular piece of resilience, you could have been with other people, could have been a big dance party, whatever it is for you, could be ritual or ceremony that you've been a part of. But as you locate yourself there again, and as you recall that, let yourself really notice what were the smells. Yeah, like I was smelling that cold night air with the pine tree scent. Right? What were the smells that are a part of your experience? What were the sounds? Uh, yeah, notice what the sounds were. Notice what you were seeing. Yeah. And then very particularly notice what you were feeling and sensing. So sensing, for me, the warmth of that sleeping bag, the relaxation of my body, in that moment, just the sheer openness. I felt this wide open sense in my chest and in my belly of being connected to something much more vast with the stars. What were your senses? And then what were your emotions? Yeah, so letting yourself very much access that experience. If you're with other people, you can notice them near you. I had my sister laying next to me in that sleeping bag, feeling her weight on that trampoline. All right. Does everybody have one? Okay, I'm seeing heads nodding and thumbs up. Good. So what we want to do is we want to keep that close by. And then what I'm going to do is invite us into a practice of somatizing, okay? And there's many different ways, many different practices we have in somatics to do that. But what I mean by somatizing is I want to invite everyone to get more deeply into their own aliveness, right? We want to come from the conceptual mind and drop into our full soma, our senses, our feelings. It's like living inside of our own skin rather than just living inside of our own thoughts. Okay? I'm going to do that in a simple practice of a body scan and then pivot that into a centering practice with resilience and a movement practice with resilience. Okay? So, somatizing. Again, you can have your eyes be open or closed, but I want to invite you to bring yourself into your sensing self. So, first, let yourself really drop into the sensations of temperatures. Where are you feeling more warm inside of yourself? Where are you feeling more cool? And keep dropping your attention from your thinking down lower to your body. So, you might drop your attention into your chest. You might notice how your chest expands with your breathing and noticing what you're feeling right through the front and back of your chest or even the inside. As we do this, go ahead and soften and relax your eyes and soften and relax your jaw at the hinge and also at the chin. That softening in the head lets us drop more into the rest of our bodies. And then go ahead and bring your attention down into your belly, belly, low back, mid back, starting to have more of a drop to open attention. Again, you can notice temperatures there. You can notice pressure where you might feel more relaxed or more taut in your body. And I also just want to acknowledge in this time when many of us are overwhelmed, many of us might feel anxious, many of us might feel more conserving, right? Trying to protect ourselves. Where you notice that in your body or in your soma, just make space for it. You don't need to try to change it at this moment. Almost just get wider and make more space for it as we go. Yeah. And let's all drop our attention down into our hips. Since most of us are seated, just notice your weight in your seat. Again, temperatures, pressures, you might even notice movement. And let's bring our attention all the way into our lower bodies. Yeah, you might feel those big muscles in your legs, quadriceps, hamstrings, through your knees, calves, down into your feet. Good. So just somatizing, feeling ourselves, dropping into aliveness more. Let your breath drop all the way down to your belly. And then now that we're in the feeling self, go ahead and bring your attention back to that particular experience of resilience that you recalled and place yourself in that experience. What image brings you most resilience? What of the smells or the sounds of that experience bring you resilience? What senses or emotions from that experience bring you resilience? Really bring yourself back into, all right, that particular experience for you, and let yourself feel it. Let yourself access it as best as you can. In our somatic language, let that resilience shape you. Let it actually inform your nervous system. If you notice that it starts bringing you a little bit more energy than you want right now, you can just go ahead and relax. See if you can relax around it, or even if you need to, you can turn it down, right? Like you might turn down volume 2, 3, 4%. But let that resilience really run in your nervous system, inform your muscular system, inform your emotions. Gonna hang with it a little bit longer. Keep bringing your attention back to the components that bring you the most resilience. And let it get all the way down into your lower body. See if it can help you connect into gravity a little bit more, finding more weight in your body. Good. Good. And then just let that settle in your nervous system. Notice what has shifted in you or what is invited into you. Good. And I'm just going to pause for a moment and take a couple of comments or questions here. So, for comments, how are you doing? What are you noticing in yourself? Or any questions about resilience or this orientation of accessing our resilience on purpose. And then I'm going to take us into a bit more practice. And so, Lunas, I know that you're here with us. Can you bring some comments or questions from the chat or just call on someone?
Absolutely. We had a question earlier as you started from Sharon Hoffman, and she mentions the teaching of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, about how one holds their thoughts and mind. And if you can comment to that, that would be wonderful.
Well, I have to say, I don't. I could use a little bit more context on the question. So I don't know if you can take yourself off of mute and elaborate on your question a little bit more. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah. You mentioned all these wonderful things like connection with spirit and people. And so I just wondered the thing you didn't mention, was how one holds one mind or thoughts, which was so instrumental in Viktor Frankl's teaching. And I just wondered how that plays all into this for you.
Yeah, it's a very big question. I would think of mind and thoughts as different things. But how somatics really holds our thoughts are a couple of ways. One is that we, like any other embodied habit, we can have embodied ways of thinking or habitual ways of thinking or thought patterns. And those can be more resourcing, right? When we're putting our thoughts toward connection, possibility, um, holding our own cares and concerns as well as others. And we can also have habitual thoughts that are more negative or more de-resourcing, right? And then I think mind, and again, it's why it's a very complicated question. Mind we might hold as more as our capacity to be connected to something more vast, or mind as a more open or empty space of potential. One of the most important things in somatics is really holding our capacity and our ability to attend or to focus our mind. So in somatics, we often say we want to bring our attention to sensations. We want to focus our mind or our capacity to attend to aliveness. We want to bring our attention to what matters most to us or the positive impact we hope to make. So I'm going to leave it there for the moment, but somatics definitely holds that our thinking self, our emotional self, our relating self, our acting self, that those are all embodied competencies. And particularly in times of stress, we want to keep working with ourselves to shift from a more triggered or hyper alert state to a more centered, cohered, resilient state, because we have different thoughts from there and we make different choices from there. So thanks, Sharon. So Lunas, do you have another? Yeah.
I do. We have a question from Susan Joseph, and she says that I found it challenging to discern between resilience and comfort. And if you could speak on that.
Great question. Thank you. Sometimes people also struggle between what's resilience and what are our survival strategies. So let me talk about comfort first, and then maybe I'll talk about survival strategies that are more about action. So what we want to notice is if I'll say a limitation of comfort. Comfort is a fine thing. I think probably many of us, myself included, are yearning for some comfort right now. And by that, I mean more easefulness, more relaxation, more connection. But comfort can also lean toward numbing, which is like I'm going to shrink up my feeling capacity. I'm going to shrink my feeling capacity to try to only feel comfort or try to only self-soothe. And that tends to move us in a direction of more contraction rather than expanding our capacity to center amidst many, many different types of sensations, or our capacity to be present with a wide range of emotions. So yes, we absolutely want to comfort. We want to soothe ourselves and the people around us, so we're not in a consistent state of anxiety, overwhelm, or for some people, more depression. So comfort is fine, and we want to go, is comfort within a range of sensations that we're allowing? So anytime we try to contract and get away from a certain set of sensations or emotions, we're contracting our whole range, which means we are less resourceful, which means we'll have less access to resilience. So one of the markers of resilience, again, is that we actually feel more. We're opening to the feeling senses, we're opening to sensation, and within them, we're honing and building and practicing, accessing resourcefulness, again, a sense of wisdom, again, a sense of being connected to something greater than ourselves while we're also connected to ourselves. So I would speak in that direction. On the action, I'm just going to throw it in here. Many of us, when we're in a more hyper-aroused state, move into automatic action. Like, what can I do? How can I help? How can I handle this? Or how can I manage? right? And we'll move into that type of action. We would say that's a more uncentered set of actions. It can feel resilient because we're moving energy, we're maybe making a difference, we're maybe getting some things done. But action coming from resilience is action that has a pause in it. It's action in which we can really connect to what is it that we really care about. It's action that looks at our moment and is able to assess the current moment and then take actions that actually fit the moment and our assessment. So that's a different kind of what we call centered action or skillful action or resilient action, rather than an automatic type of action that can really come from our survival strategies. And again, I really want to normalize, of course, we're all thrown into our habitual survival strategies at this point. We just have the opportunity through practice and through processing, right, the aliveness in our system to help ourselves move from resilience and to cultivate our own and each other's resilience. So Lunas, let's just do one more and then we'll practice a bit again.
Great. I have a few questions here that are around trauma and grief. And one person has mentioned that as they are doing the memory sensing, that they're feeling sadness around nostalgia.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Really good noticing. That's a good question. So let me say a couple of things here. Reconnecting with resilience and particular experiences can have us touch into grief that's historic or that's current, and can have us touch into a quality of yearning. The first thing we want to do is just make room for that. Because resilience opens us, sometimes it can also open other feelings that we might have tucked away. And we might need to really include those feelings on our resilience or even attend to them. Also, I think some of us who, let's say, haven't gotten the opportunity to practice resilience more regularly, when we do remember those moments of resilience, we yearn for them because we're missing them. So we can just take that as a sign it's good to practice them now on purpose to bring our resilience or access to those experiences closer, which we'll go there in this call. Yeah. Resilience doesn't have us feel good all the time. Resilience just has us access more resource states to be able to process, be present with, and make good choices inside of our real live situation now. Yeah. If I had a pill to make us feel good all the time, well, we'd all probably take it. But right, we don't have that. We just get to be resourceful, choiceful, connected to what we care about, taking care of each other, right? That's where we're headed. So, shall we do another practice? All right, let's do another practice here. For those of you that it works for, I'm going to invite you to stand up. And I'm going to move my computer so we have a little different view. All I have, like you all, is my Zoom camera. So we're not going to be able to see my whole body, but a little bit more here. All right. So you can do this seated, you can do this laying down, or you can do it standing. We're going to do a centering practice that is focused on resilience, and then a movement practice next to that. So, standing or seated, I'm going to ask you to drop your attention about 2 inches below your belly button. And if it is helpful, I will show you, hear me, you can drop your hand to this lower center. Yeah, again, a couple inches below your belly button. And I'm going to ask you to follow your breath down into your belly. Yeah. Bring your attention down to center. You can feel the rising and falling of your belly under your hand, or the pressure of your hand on your belly. In somatics, we call this center. Yeah. And then what I'm going to ask you to do again is to bring a phrase, an image, the memory of a smell or sensation of your resilience down to center. So right down into center, I'm just going to bring the view of that night sky. Right down into center, I'm going to bring the warmth of that sleeping bag. Yeah, so again, whatever it is for you, bring your resilience, your recollection of that resilience down to center. Then we're going to center in 4 dimensions. If you feel pretty in your center, you can drop your hand or you can leave it there during the practice, whichever you like. And we're going to center in resilience in our length. So that means dropping all that resilience and our attention into our lower body, letting our weight come more into gravity, and at the same time lengthening up. So finding more space between your vertebrae, and again, bring that resilience with you. So a settling down and a lengthening up at the same time. One of our teachers calls it like a French press. Yeah. Be centered in your length, top to bottom, and then go ahead and be centered in your resilience, top to bottom. Good, and then we're going to center in width, left to right. So from the center line here, go ahead and widen out left to right. You can widen across your shoulder blades. You can widen across your collarbones. You can widen hip to hip and foot to foot. Do this in the felt senses, so we're not just having an idea of it, but we're practicing it in our nervous system. You might center left to right, moving left to right on your feet. Centering, widening. And then let that resilience occupy your width. Maybe you feel your ribs widen as you breathe. Good. Centering in width, bringing your resilience into width. Being connected to yourself and also attentive and connected to others. We think of width as a social space. How do we bring our resilience to ourselves and to others? Then we're going to center in depth, front to back. Yes, we're going to make help ourselves be more connected to our back space, our inside space, and our front space. So let's start with the back. And just find a sensation or aliveness along your back body. Then bring your attention inside of yourself, your internal terrain. See if you can make more space front to back, more space for your own aliveness, more space for this resilience. And remember that our legs have a back and a front also, our heels and our toes, our cranium, our head. And then coming through all the way to the front side. And then again, let that resilience really occupy your volume. I saw in some of the chat for you, it's horses, it was dancing, it was music. Let that come into your depth. Good. Length, width, depth, centering in all of those. And then let yourself feel your whole self centering, right? This dropped open attention at center with your resilience. And then last but not least, in the centering practice, we always center around purpose. Yeah, I know that many of us, our purpose might be jarred a little bit right now, like we were really clear in January and it's a different game in April. So let yourself just center around who and what matters to you in this time. And let that also, let your care, your commitments also inform your nervous system, right? Let it help shape you. Centered is being present, open, connected, and purposely again connecting to our resilience. All right, I'm going to take this into a slight movement practice. And I want to say a little bit about why I'm doing that on this call today. Because there is a lot happening in our world. There's a lot happening in our lives and our communities. It naturally stimulates the impulse to, the core impulses, the core survival impulses of fight, flight, freeze, appease, dissociate. When we are threatened, we have this amazing evolutionary intelligence that moves us into ways of surviving. And fight, flight, freeze, appease, dissociate are the natural, inherent to this psychobiology ways that we can get, right, moved or triggered into survival. Those all have a lot of potential energy in them because many of them move us to organize ourselves quickly into a different state. Because we don't necessarily want to be living, loving, relating, and acting from those states, we also need to move that aliveness in some kind of way. So I'm going to bring us into a rowing practice. It's a very simple practice we can do with ourselves, with each other. You can also do this seated, okay? So you can do it seated or standing. I'm going to ask you to bring, I'm going to slightly turn sideways. I'm going to ask you to bring your left foot in front of your right, maybe about 2 to 3 feet apart, whatever is comfortable for your body. If you're seated, just have your feet on the floor. And then what I'm going to ask us to do is from center again, you can put your hand there again if it helps. We're going to move our center forward and then back. Forward and back. Just moving our weight to our front foot and then our back foot. Our front foot and our back foot. If you're seated, you can just move your upper body forward and back, okay? And then what I'm going to ask you to do is imagine there's a set of oars in front of you. Yeah, like oars, like a boat. I'm going to have you grab the oars and then pull them to center as we move. So our arms will go forward and back. Forward and back. Good. I'm going to invite you to inhale and exhale. As you're moving, let more weight come into your lower body. Good. As you're moving, let that resilience experience be with you. Almost like you could bring that energy in, that experience in, and let some of the overwhelm and the anxiety or whatever it is for you move out. And just for the fun of this, I'm going to make it a little bit more complicated. And in a moment, I'm going to say change. And when I say change, bring your right foot forward and your left foot back. we're just changing our stance along with the movement of our arms. So, and change. Bring the right foot forward, left foot back as we continue to row. And change. And change. And change every time. Hands go forward and the back foot comes forward. Relaxing in the change. Connecting to your resilience in the change. And pause. Good, just take a moment and feel yourself. And then inside that increased movement or breath or energy, whatever you notice happening in you, go ahead and bring your attention back to center. Yeah, we can organize ourselves amidst a lot happening. Bring our attention back to center. Allow whatever is happening to happen and still organize yourself. And then bring your attention back to resilience. Let that resilience run in your sensations. Let it help you recenter yourself. All right, those of you who are standing, let's sit ourselves back down. And I want to say a couple of things about purposeful practice. When there is more stress, we want to practice more. I know that's obvious, but it is the easiest time to drop out our practices is when there is a lot of pressure. And there's going to be sustained pressure for quite a while. So practice. There are two ways to practice resilience. Well, there's multiple ways to practice resilience, but two ways I want to point out on this call. One is to do what we did today, which is in your apartment, in your house, wherever you're sheltered in place, to recall resilient experiences that you have and do what we did today. Recall them very specifically. Somatize them, right? Center with them, let them into your nervous system, and have that be a daily practice. So if you have another daily practice of some kind of movement or sitting meditation or centering, just connect resilience right into and onto that. Another thing that we can do inside of our whoever we're on Zooms with, whoever we're living with, is we can actually interview each other about your resilience practices. Yeah, this is actually something that I used to do with my mom, because sometimes she would lean toward the negative, and it always made a difference when I would go, "Mom, tell me about what art project you're working on. What are your favorite colors right now?" And we would get into conversations about what brought her resilience, and it would completely, one, shape the conversation, but also help to shift her state. So the questions we went through today, you can have those conversations with each other. You can have them with your clients. You can have them with your kids. You can have them inside your teams, okay? The other thing that we can do, so those are about recalling historical resilience experiences and then letting ourselves somatize them and practice being inside of them again, right? There are resources we can cultivate. The other is have current time resilience experiences. So I know that we all have a more limited kind of access than maybe usual. But if you are a person where nature is a part of resilience for you or animals are a part of resilience for you, be around them if possible. And instead of, let's say, heading out on a walk and be thinking about what's happening, center yourself, get into your felt senses, open yourself, and let the nature touch you. Or if you have an animal that's at home, have a conscious felt time watching that animal, petting that animal, whatever it is for you. One of my friends, because she loves animals but doesn't have an animal, is she watches animal YouTube videos, but watches them from a sense of, I'm going to let this touch me. I'm going to let this resource me. Yeah. For those of you where it's music or dance or art, do that, right? Go, great, I'm going to do my 7-minute dance resilience practice, and I'm going to do it every day, right? You can also, it's a great thing to do either on, when you gather with the people you care about on Zoom, or if you're living with people in your family, it's a great thing to put on music together and go, let's all listen to this music, or let's all move to this music together, or get out the crayons and markers and do some art together. The most important thing is, well, two, is one, as much as possible, make it a daily practice, right? There is so much pressure that is difficult, anxiety producing, helpless producing, that we need to counter it, or we need to work with that on a regular basis. So do a daily practice. And again, bring it from the past or invoke current state, but make sure it's felt, right? Just resilience conceptually, it's an awesome idea, but it's through the felt system, right? Through our somas and shifting our states that it actually really lets us be in a different place of connecting, choosing, thinking, making assessments, okay? Any of you who are connected to live with people, or are connected to your team still, these are all great practices to bring to your teams. Yeah, if you can do it collectively, our collective soma, our collective psychobiology is tweaked. So the more we can go, where are there collective places where we can access resilience, center together, talk about what matters to us, it helps the collective system reset. Yeah. All right, we just have a few minutes left here. So Salunas, if it's possible, maybe a couple more questions, and then we have some next steps.
That was great, Stacy. There's a lot of people in the chat just really appreciating this practice today. We have one from Iman. Iman would like to ask a question over video. So Iman, if you can unmute.
Hi, Stacy.
Hey, nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for that. I have a question around recognizing the difference between bypass and resilience. For those of us in faith communities, how do we recognize the difference between spiritual bypass and spiritual resilience? Because there is a lot of spiritual resilience happening in faith communities right now, and I'm finding it very hard to recognize what that fine line and what separates the two.
Thanks for asking. It's a great question. I would say really two things. One is it felt? And what I mean by felt is it physically, somatically felt? Because we definitely can have emotionally exalted experiences where the body is really left behind. And so what we're looking at in any spiritual practice right now to build resilience is that you can actually feel it in your tissues as well. Yeah, so we might feel more open-hearted, but we can also feel our legs, right? Or we might feel thankfully connected to something greater than us or to our God. And we can also experience it in a tangible way. So the first thing is just measure, are we feeling our bodies while we're accessing spiritually resilient spaces? The other thing that I would say is that resilience moves us toward connection and, let me just say, loving and helping others. Yeah. So spiritual states that have us isolate and separate is where we also want to watch. So resilience will bring us into more, like I said before, sense of safety and connection. And then, one of the things that I am appreciating right now is how much cooperation we're seeing, right? There's high levels of cooperation and high levels of creativity that people are showing in order to resource and help. So felt senses, connection, and that impulse, whether we're able to follow it very much or not, but that impulse toward also resourcing others. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think, maybe let's sneak in one more, Salunas.
Okay, I'm trying to pick an easy one for you since we have just a few more minutes. Goodness. There's a few people who've asked more about rowing, why rowing's important. And one person has commented that they felt more anxiety during the rowing exercise. So maybe that's a good one.
Great, good. Two things. First of all, some movement, some way to let the aliveness or anxiety move out and through our bodies is really important. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll numb or we'll contract it to try to manage it. So this might sound weird. I know some people are new to somatics, but finding the openings where things can run out of us. So that can really be your palms, the bottom of your feet, the top of your head, your pelvis. There's ways for energy to run out of us when there's too much sensation or emotion in us. Okay, so whatever that is for you, finding ways to let the aliveness, right? Anxiety is a type of aliveness. Let it move out of us if our systems are overwhelmed, okay? The more we drop our attention lower in our body, the more it helps to handle overwhelm or anxiety. So keep bringing our attention low to center or down into weight. We use the word grounded, but like, how do you get grounded? One way is drop your attention and your weight low in the body, and then give an outflow for the overwhelm. Again, somatically an outflow. That can also be crying or singing or yelling, but outflow, think outflow. If any practice feels overwhelming to you, including your own resilience, you can turn it down. And I know that seems like a weird thing, but we really know how to do it. It's like the volume's too loud. Let me just turn it down so that my soma can handle it. Yeah. So if the rowing created more anxiety, either open the outflows more or turn it down or slow it down. But we do want a way to move things through when there's just so much happening individually and collectively. So thank you. That was a great question. All right, let me say a couple of things in closing here. First of all, I want you all to know that we are going to do an online series to just really help resource all of us in this time. There'll be a, are you interested sheet that's going to come out after this call, and that will also be on our website. So just know that that's coming. And if you're interested, we'll be diving in more over a series. So Lunas, do you want to say anything more about that before I have my final comments?
If they have any.
Oh, now we can't hear you, Selena.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Here? Okay. If you have any additional questions about the online course, you can always email me at nicole@joseinstitute.com.
Thank you. The last thing I want to say is I do really, like all of you, I'm trying to understand and assess these times and go, what is possible? There are a lot of threats in this time, obviously health and socially and economically at a very large scale. There are also a lot of opportunities in our times. I think this is, at least in my lifetime so far, this is the largest scale of pandemic that I've seen in my 50 years. But the opportunities are also great in that how can we use the openings of this time in our communities and also socially, politically, and economically to keep moving toward more equity, to keep moving toward right relationship with the planet, right? In some ways, we can understand this current virus and its spread as also part of a climate disaster because of an imbalance of our relationship actually with the natural world. So there are opportunities, and I think the way that we can best understand the opportunities, whatever our location, is to be as resourced, as centered, individually and collectively as we can, so we can really assess the moment and assess the opportunities of the moment. So there is so much cooperation. How can we keep participating in and then leveraging that wide-scale human cooperation through this time, right? Through the fall and our US elections into next year toward really, the society and the economy we want for our grandkids and for our great-grandkids, and toward more equity. So the more we resource, the more we bring resilience, I think the better decisions and skill we can bring to our times. So thank you all very much for being here today. It's great to see so many of your faces, and I look forward to seeing you again. And let's all do our daily resilience practices.